Is there a burning issue within your community? We'd love to hear from you at Talk Radio Wales. Call or text on 07308 598 604 or email manager@talkradiowales.com. Follow us on Facebook or tweet at Talk Wales.
I'm with Andrew Richards, the energy consultant with Energy Saving Grants. Auntie, welcome along. You've studied environmental science at university and you've been working within the energy saving field for some time now. You'll be aware, obviously, that the field is wide. This is a growth industry. This is something that is on everybody's lips. This is something that is on advertising and posted through people's doors. Vans are passing every day with heat force and enviro heating and so on. What's happening? This is a bit of a revolution in insulation and heating in Wales, isn't it?
Yeah, there is a green revolution at the moment, and there's a big push to help people reduce their energy bills, help people who are in fuel poverty. Unfortunately, due to the rising cost of energy bills, more and more people now are in fuel poverty. And unfortunately, the UK has got the second highest rate of fuel poverty in Europe. So there are lots of government schemes now available to help people insulate their homes, install solar panels, install renewable energy to make their homes more energy efficient and save money on their bills.
When you say fuel poverty, I remember growing up as a child. I don't know how you were brought up, but my mum and dad used to go out and get coal. We'd smash coal up and we'd burn anything on the fire. That, I guess, was fuel poverty at the time. But now we're talking about affecting sort of middle class, upper class, all sorts of people can apply for this kind of fuel poverty if they sort of conform to some of the criteria. Yeah,
that's right. So fuel poverty is defined as someone having to spend more than 10% of their income to heat their home on fuel.
So that could be, as I say, it's somebody living in a small council house or cottage to somebody living in a large house.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm speaking to people every day who haven't got the money to heat their homes, basically. I spoke to someone on the phone yesterday. They were living in a 3-bed semi-detached house in Norfolk, and they were spending £850 a month on their heat. That's just to heat their home. They have 3 children, and they only had electric storage heaters in the house, and there's £850 a month to heat their home.
There are numerous sort of schemes. If I recall, there's Nest, there's Eco4, there's Solar Only. I don't know what that one's called. Just give us a rundown of the big 4 then that are available. What are they?
Okay. So yeah, it's very complicated for the public because there's different schemes available. There's another one due to start next month. So the main funding scheme that I deal with is the Eco scheme, or Eco4 scheme as it's called now, which stands for the Energy Company Obligation. So the government have put an obligation on the largest energy companies, so your British Gas, your Scottish Power, EDF, E.ON, etc., to cut down on carbon dioxide emissions. And the energy companies provide funding for people to make their homes more energy efficient. So there's £4 billion of funding being made available for this Eco4 scheme. There are other schemes then, such as the Boiler Upgrade Scheme, the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, the Home Upgrade Grant, which is called the HUG scheme, and then a new scheme due to start in April called the Eco Plus scheme, and that's aimed at people who don't qualify for the Eco4 scheme. So with the Eco4 scheme, the majority of people receive 100% grants, but they have to be in receipt of a tax credit or qualifying benefit or meet other criteria such as having an income of below $31,000 a year. This new scheme, which is due to start in April, is designed for people who don't meet the Eco4 scheme, where they'll still receive funding, but it probably won't be 100% grant. It'll be a partial grant towards the cost of the work.
I'm speaking to a lot of people, Andy, that either have had the work done or are going to have the work done or considering having the work done. And some of the companies that pass through here, I've spoken to some of them as well. There are some concerns that, you're letting people into your home, really. There's a lack of skilled people in Wales to do the installations. A lot of the work apparently is being given to companies, dare I say, over the bridge, over the border to come in. And some people are unhappy about the quality of that work, and specifically the plastering or the way they knock the house about. This is a sort of a one-size-fits-all almost to the solution. But for a lot of people, I know the CEO of Bosch was saying that, look, this is, for this to work, you have to have well-insulated houses. And unfortunately, in the UK, it's Victorian housing stock, and they're not well insulated. How are you going to get around this? Is a one-size-fits-all suitable, or should we be really talking to the consumer more and saying, look, let's look at your house, let's look at what you want, let's look at what you can afford to pay. It's no good us putting storage heaters with a bill at £850 a month. It's no good us putting oil in with a bill at so and so. Can we look at maybe insulating every aspect of your house, between the floors? New windows. These are the kind of things that people are discussing.
Yeah. Ideally, there'd be funding available to insulate every part of the house, install new windows, etc. At the end of the day, it's up to the energy companies what they fund. The government have put in place the option for them to fund replacement windows, but because of the cost of them, they tend not to give funding towards double glazing. The main funding available is for loft insulation, solid wall insulation, so that could either be insulated in the wall on the inside of the property, known as internal wall insulation, or on the outside of the property, which is known as external wall insulation. If the property's got a cavity, then potentially the cavity could be insulated, but an inspection would need to be carried out just to see if the property was suitable to have the cavities insulated. There's also room-in-room insulation. So if a property has got a bedroom up in the loft space with sloping ceilings, then the underside of the ceilings can be insulated. And then solar is a big option. Lots of people now having solar installed to reduce electric bills. And then in terms of heating, the main option people haven't done now is air source heat pumps on this grant scheme. Yeah. They're not suitable for every property, but they can be very efficient for some properties.
And the UK has one of the lowest take-ups of sales of heat pumps. Some politicians are saying, certainly in opposition to Welsh Government, that this is going to take over 100 years at the rate that it's going now to insulate every home just in Wales. Do you agree with that kind of sort of prediction then that this is going to take that kind of length of time, the way things are going?
Yeah, unfortunately. So when I started in the industry, which was about 15 years ago, there was a scheme called CERT, Carbon Emission Reduction Target, and that was a very good scheme. Millions and millions of properties had energy efficient measures installed. Since that scheme came to an end, unfortunately, there's been a massive decline in the number of properties having energy saving measures installed. We're hoping now, with this new Eco Plus scheme that's supposed to start in April, there will be a big uptake in the number of properties being insulated. But yeah, there just needs to be more funding, basically, and more awareness about the schemes, because a lot of people just aren't aware that these schemes are available. Unless they've had a friend or family member, etc., have one of these grants, a lot of people just aren't aware of these grant schemes.
And with solar panels, I remember sort of like worrying about, solar panels on my roof, will it take it? Who owns these panels? I won't get a mortgage. Things have changed with solar panels as well, haven't they? There are now really big incentives. But just talk us through, how does that work? And what are the benefits? How much can people expect to sort of save on their energy bills as a result of filling their roof with solar panels?
It's a good question, difficult one to answer, because it all depends on the size of the roof, how many panels can fit on the roof. It depends how you use the electricity that's generated by the solar. So, for example, we'd recommend using appliances such as washing machines, tumble dryers in the middle of the day when the panels are generating most electricity. The official figures could be anywhere from 25% up to 75% by having solar installed. But there's so many factors that come into play. Obviously, you're going to be generating more electricity in the summer than in the winter. If you install a battery, then you can store any electricity that you're not using throughout the day and then use that overnight. And it's a good point you made about people being worried about who the roof of the house belongs to if the house solar installed. Because in the past, there used to be a government scheme called the feed-in tariff. With that, the government would pay people an annual fee over 25 years as an incentive to have solar installed. And because incentives were so good, private companies would offer customers the option to install the solar for free and effectively rent their roof. And the customer would benefit from free electricity, but then the company installing the solar panels keep that feed-in tariff for 25 years and effectively be renting the customer's roof. That scheme is now stopped, so that's no longer applicable.
Go. Right, so the air source heating pumps, these are, again, they're attracting a little bit of ire on social media and various pages, discussion groups saying, look, some of them they're external units, they're quite noisy. The house isn't as warm as it was when I had my little fire going on my oil boiler. The other thing is, there's so much money being thrown now at looking for green energy solutions, the new technology. Do you see a time, maybe in the next 20 years, where somebody somewhere comes up with something far more reliable, if you like, far less energy thirsty? We don't seem to be exploring water technology that much. Hydrogen has been floated as the next sort of, best thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there are trials ongoing now in terms of hydrogen, using it as heating for homes. Personally, I think renewable energy is the way to go in terms of wind power, solar power, etc., because solar panels work every single day of the year.
This is the thing, Andy, isn't it? Is that people can get confused. The renewable energy is actually the sun, the wind, and the water. Yeah. It's not a machine. Yeah. It's not anything else. That is the renewable bit, something that runs off that, not off the grid.
That's right. Yeah. So in some areas, there could be a mixture. So in some areas, in major towns and cities, there may be hydrogen used. Then in rural areas, it may be renewable energy that's used. Because in some rural areas now that aren't connected to the mains gas network, it's unlikely that they'll be connected to the hydrogen network in the future. So the hydrogen may just be, used in major towns and cities, and then in more rural areas, then be relying on wind and solar.
Why is it that the Scandinavian countries are so good at this? Is it because they have extreme cold weather and they just have got used to doing this the way they do it?
It's a number of factors. So the Scandinavian countries are about 20 years ahead of the UK in terms of energy efficiency for homes and buildings. Partly their housing stock as well. So in the UK, we've got a lot of old stone and solid brick buildings, which unfortunately aren't very energy efficient. In Scandinavia, they tend to use timber for building. But yeah, there's so many reasons, but a lot of countries are just so ahead of the UK, if you like, in terms of energy efficiency. So in Europe, for example, France, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Spain, Portugal, they're just probably about 10 to 20 years ahead of the UK in terms of the uptake of renewable energy and insulating homes and just making sure they're more energy efficient.
For anyone listening to this podcast now and they're sitting there with like rising bills, they're not putting the heating on, they're sitting in a poorly insulated home, maybe they've got a coal fire or a wood fire or an old oil boiler or a gas boiler that needs looking at, I'm getting messages from people who are in those positions on a daily basis. What would you say to them? Would you say apply, get online, apply, phone, whatever they like and try and get this grant?
It's definitely worth looking into. What normally tends to happen is that when someone contacts us, we have a discussion, ask questions about the property, ask questions about customers' personal circumstances to see what potentially they may be entitled to in terms of funding. And then if it's something that the customer's interested in, we'd arrange for a survey to visit the property. It's a free, no obligation survey, just to see what potentially could be installed in the property to make it more energy efficient, and to see, what funding would be available for the customer. So over the last 12 months, due to the rapid rising cost of energy, receiving lots and lots of phone calls now from people who are concerned about their bills, and are ready to make a change, basically. So that whether that be installing internal wall insulation and solar panels on the roof and a new heating system in the property, it's definitely worth customers looking into. It's no obligation, so even if they have a survey carried out and they decide they don't want to proceed, then that's fine.
It seems to be that we, as you say, we're so far behind. We need to take a really big look at the employment industry, the college and universities, the schools, and the education around green energy, renewables, and heat efficiency. Is this something you're involved in, or involved with, or is it something you're party to with talks with Welsh Government or other partners that, there's a deficit in labour to do this work, and that's one of the issues holding it back?
I'm not really involved in that side of it, unfortunately. But yeah, from speaking to other people, there does seem to be a deficit of people in the industry, and I think that there needs to be more funding available for training, because this is the future, basically. So but it's not something that I know a lot about, unfortunately, because I'm not involved in that side of the business.
Yeah. So your company, to get in touch with you, is it to get in touch with Energy Saving Grants? Is that the first port of call for people who are interested in looking at an alternative? Yeah,
so if people are on the internet, they can go on the website. There's some information on there about the grant schemes available and on the different energy efficiency measures. They can call our telephone number. It's there's no charge to call from a mobile or a landline phone number, and I have a chat with customers on the phone and explain what funding is currently available, and then say if they'd like a survey carried out on the property, we can arrange that for them.
And the survey, if I remember, is somebody comes up with like a Doctor Who type gadget and points it here and there in every room.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
measures the temperature of the room. So they can tell, really, with this technology, what your EPC is, how cold, how warm it is, where the drafts are almost, where you're losing heat.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a qualified retrofit assessor who visits the property. Average survey depending on the size of the property, normally takes between 1 and 2 hours. So it's quite a detailed survey of the property.
Yeah.
And what they do is carry out an energy performance certificate, which gives the property a rating from A, which is the most efficient, down to G, which is the least efficient. The amount of funding available for that property is based on what rating the property has, energy performance certificate. So what the survey involves is looking at loft insulation, whether the walls are insulated, the type of heating in the property, the size of the property. So they normally use a laser measure to measure the size of the rooms, and then all that information is put into software to calculate the rating of the property. The reason I say it's worth people looking into this funding is because we've helped thousands of people obtain grants over the last 15 years. I've been in the industry, and at the moment the funding is higher than it's ever been since I've worked in the industry. So some properties are receiving £30,000-40,000 worth of funding. So on this current Eco4 scheme, unfortunately, less than 1% of the population actually qualify for the scheme.
Yeah.
But who do qualify receive a lot of funding. The funding, this current Eco4 scheme is mainly targeted at people who haven't got gas central heating. So if people have got oil or LPG, electric or coal or wood heating, then they can potentially receive a lot of funding.
Well, Andy, it's been fantastic talking to you. We'll air the podcast, and I'm sure it's going to be very informative for a lot of people. But many thanks for your help, and good luck with what you're doing.
Okay, thanks very much. Good to speak to you.
No problem.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Andy.